know that you think you're the coolest one in town, but to me you'll be much cooler when you're 6 feet underground. Some of us are crazy, some are smart and brave, but it doesn't really matter, we all end up in the grave. All my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead. I said all my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead. All my favorite people are dead.
Okay. So, welcome to another episode of All My Favorite People Are Dead. Totally dead. Like never coming back. But, however, I have to say that not all of my favorite people are dead, because I happen to have one of my favorite people as a guest today.
Yay!
Yay! And my guest is none other than my brother, Shawn Butler.
Why, hello.
Hello. Are you saying hello to the world?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
What few listeners we may have at this
Yeah.
current stage of the game. So, when I was mentioning to my bro that I wanted to do, have him as a guest on my show, I asked him for his list of favorite dead people, and he's like, I got a lot of them.
Unfortunately, some of them I only assumed were dead, and they're not.
That's okay. I mean, we all die at some point.
They're really, really old, though, so we'll still get a chance eventually.
So, essentially, I mentioned, picking someone who you thought would be a good starting point, and the guy that he chose happened to kind of match the girl that I chose, or at least that I was researching and reading about at the time, and I'm like, oh my god, we could do a whole themed episode on these two folks, because they've got some connections, and I'm not going to give it away, but all I'm going to say is, my heart will go on.
That was bad.
I know. So, in other words, we're kind of doing a kind of Titanic-related theme today. So you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So the first dead person we will be discussing is a woman named Violet Jessop. And maybe that's not terribly familiar to everybody. Maybe it is. If you're a hardcore Titanic fan, then yeah.
She also goes by the name Miss Unsinkable.
There you go.
That or the Queen of Sinking Ships, which is not exactly flattering.
They were actually calling her the Queen when she was on the Britannic.
Ah. Well, she got her sinking ships from somewhere.
Yeah. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of details on Violet so you can understand how she became who she was. Now, first of all, her family was originally from Dublin, but she was actually born in Argentina because her father had immigrated there to try sheep farming. And my immediate question was, are there no sheep in Dublin? That seems...
I'm sure there's quite a few.
There's got to be a few, right? So South America seems like a hell of a trek just to try sheep farming. But apparently that didn't really work out anyway. And her father had taken a job at the Port Authority in Bahia Blanca. I think I'm saying that right. Bahia Blanca in Argentina. And the family moved from a world in the fields and countryside to a port city, which was quite different. She was the first of many children, and her mother continued to have lots more. Violet recalled taking over her responsibilities in the household and how serious she took it. Like, she shows from an early age that she can be very, what's the word I'm looking for here? Disciplined.
Them Irish have some work ethic sometimes.
Right, yeah. Some serious work ethic, yeah. Her childhood was rough, though. She barely survived it. It's really amazing that she survived her childhood and that she survived all the shit that comes up later. So, yeah. She had accidentally been poisoned when she was a little girl. Got some nasty fever that I believe was similar to scarlet fever. She suffered from hemorrhages and almost died from consumption, also known as tuberculosis. Like, she distinctly remembered lying in a bed in a hospital in Argentina, and the doctors were decided to put her outside in the gardens in this bed because it was fresh air out there, and she was like, oh, pretty birds, flowers, I'm dying.
Sickness.
Yeah, sickness. And she remembered doctors looking down at her and her parents standing there, and they're like, yeah, she's not going to live long. But as a little girl, she was like, fuck you guys. I'm gonna live. So her family packed up, and then they went back into the countryside, really up into the mountains, so she can take in the fresh air. And amazingly, she actually recovered. Now, she was surrounded by death. Her siblings seemed to be dying left and right, and then one day, her father up and died too. Woo! All right. So her mom packed up the kids, and they shipped them home to England. Everybody went back home to Great Britain. Her mother actually worked as a stewardess on a ship for a while, but when she became ill and was forced to give up her career on the sea, Violet had to pick up the slack, and she got a job to help care for her family. Now, she experienced, I should say, she expressed interest in heading out to sea like her mother did, but when she went to ask for a job, the dude at the ocean liner office was like, "You're a little too pretty for life on the sea. We usually prefer old hags like your mom," apparently. Also, we don't need any single little cutie pies up in here trying to bag a husband, either crew member or wealthy passenger. So, anyway, she's like, "No, I can totally make myself look drab and ugly and boring. I'll use boring clothes. I won't do my face up or anything. I promise I'll be invisible. I'll fucking blend in with the wainscoting. Yeah, I just really need a job."
That's really crazy, though. I mean, the standards back then compared to now, like the fact that she had to make herself look like an old person. It's like, it's very clear that the White Star Line was not Hooters. Though she was actually really pretty, and she had to make herself look like she was more mature. Like, I mean, it's because of her that the Titanic went down. She was a distraction. Like, the Murdoch was like, "Oh my God, that ass." And they were like, "Iceberg dead ahead!" And he was like, "Oh yeah, wait, where?" And it's hard to starboard, I guess.
Are you blaming the sinking of the Titanic on my girl?
That's when she started putting makeup on again. I mean, they were like, "Women, children, and dead ass first."
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I don't think that's really how it went down, but
no, it's close.
Okay. Anyway, how it went down. Get it? Okay. So anyway, so the dude was like, "Okay, you're not gonna like the sea life. You're not gonna like it, but sure, we'll give you a job." So she was 21 years old, and it was 1908. And she didn't work for the White Star Line quite so quickly yet. Her first gig was on the Royal Mail Line. Not mail as in guy, mail as in, like, here's your postage, that kind of mail. And she was on board the Orinoco. I don't know. It wasn't the Titanic, not yet. She gets there later. Now, it didn't take long on her sea voyages for her to develop a crush on an officer named Ned Tracy. And later received
Ned.
Huh?
Of course it would be Ned.
Why? What?
It's just a British name.
Oh, okay. So she was madly in love with Ned. But she received marriage proposals from, like, all kinds of guys. Like, at least 2 different American passengers, tried to kind of convince her to marry. Yeah, that ass, exactly. So some passengers were insufferable, as she learned very quickly. There was one lady who demanded Violet always drop whatever she was doing and tend to her needs, like there was no other passengers that mattered. And she had a little Pekingese named Fifi, and she demanded that Fifi be given fresh lamb cutlet with fresh green peas that had to be mashed thoroughly. Nasty guests she dubbed holy terrors. And I know, I know I spoil my dogs, but I don't make them lamb with mashed peas. That's a little crazy. But anyway, this memoir that I was reading about her, which is called Titanic Survivor, excellent read. It's kind of a mix of her memoirs edited by this guy named John Maxtone Cram. And it's really well written, I think, and it kind of covers the majority of her life, the majority of her memoirs, with his notes and explanations in there as well. But in this memoir, she was tired. She tells the story. She was tired from a long day, and she's walking down the hall in the deck of the ship, and she's going to bed when she encounters this crazy lady and her Pekingese named Fifi. And the lady's like, "Oh dear, you look so very tired now. Are you going off duty?" And while Violet struggled to smile and respond, the lady was like, before you go, I just know that you will leave me some cracked ice and sandwiches in my room. And oh yes, some oranges too, or anything that you think looks good to you." And Violet was like sitting there going, "Bitch, the only thing that looks good to me right now is my fucking bed."
I gotta start doing that to my boss at work. "I believe it would be okay with you if I were to leave early today." Yeah, I think that's gonna fly.
Well, she didn't actually say that to her. She just thought it in her head and wrote it in her memoir. She's like, "This is what I really wanted to tell this bitch, but I didn't." So anyway, Violet wrote that she really wanted to tell her, to go fuck herself, essentially. Like, "I'm going to bed, bitch. It's been a long fucking day. I'm sick of you and your Pekingese Fifi. I'm going to throw him off board of the ship here. Just fuck off." But she didn't. She was like smiling and going, "Sure, of course I'll bring you cracked ice and sandwiches," as her eyes twitching. Now, contemplating what job to take next, she had a list of ocean liners to consider, and she did not want to work for the White Star Line. She absolutely dreaded the idea of working for the White Star Line, not because of the ships, because of the clientele. So the White Star Line was considered one of the most luxurious of all the transatlantic ocean liners, and up until this point, she was just kind of working on like basic ships, like nothing fancy. But the White Star Line, they were known for, very pristine and proper stewards and stewardesses, and really nasty clientele, really
pretentious
nasty
people with dogs named Fifi.
Yeah, she will meet a lot of ladies with little Pekingeses named Fifi and other shit names like that. Like, she writes about that in her memoir. She's like, "Why do so many of these goddamn women have Pekingese?" So yeah. So she's gonna meet a lot more of those. Yeah, it's actually that was my note that I put down. I'm like, how much she meets so many fucking women with Pekingeses. Why I don't know. Anyway. Interestingly, she actually preferred American passengers to English or European. She proclaimed, quote, "Americans do consider you a person first rather than a servant." Yeah, obviously you haven't met modern day Americans, honey. Maybe we were that way back in the turn of the century, but not so much anymore. She also said, "Their idiosyncrasies were difficult to bear. Most Americans want to absorb every new fad and idea as soon as it appears. As a result, they are often left in a state of hectic unrest." That is 100%. That is 100%, honey. Like, capitalism, baby. We want it. It's new. Give it to us. No questions asked. We'll take it. And if we don't get it, we get nervous. So yeah, that is very much an American thing. So she ended up joining the White Star Line, and her first ship was the Majestic, which she joined in September of 1910. By June of 1911, she was part of the hand-picked crew to join the brand new Olympic, which meant that she had made quite the impression as a stewardess. In fact, she easily made her way all the way up the ranks to first-class stewardesses, which means she was doing a damn good job.
Just so people are aware, that ship, the Majestic, happened to be captained by a certain Edward James Smith.
You're right. Yes, I did read that. Yeah, he was doing pretty good there.
At least he had that ass to look at.
He had that ass to look at. No, but see, there goes your whole theory, because he had that ass on both ships, and he only crashed one of them.
I don't know what the history of the Majestic is exactly. There might have been a couple of curbs here and there.
I don't know. Okay, so she wrote about how much she admired Thomas Andrews. She called him Tommy Andrews. And of course, he was the chief designer for Harland and Wolff, the Belfast shipbuilder who built most of the ships that she was on, actually. So Olympic did pretty well until her fifth voyage, when she collided with the HMS Hawk on September 10th, 1911. The Hawk was actually designed to sink ships by ramming them. But as it turns out, the Olympic was able to make it back home under her own power, even with a large hole in her hull. And she fared much better than the HMS Hawk did. The Olympic.
Sort of. I
Sort
mean,
of?
the propeller shaft actually was bent.
Yeah.
There's this crazy, completely debunked conspiracy theory that the Olympic was so badly damaged that they just slapped the name Olympic on the Titanic and had the Titanic as the Olympic and the Olympic as the Titanic. It's a largely debunked conspiracy theory, but there's a lot of people who like to say it. It's very strange, but it was pretty damaged. Actually,
We all love a good conspiracy theory.
Well, it depends.
So anyway, the Olympic would go on to have a long and successful career. As a matter of fact, Violet would eventually come back to it. And she was not at all concerned about continuing her career on the sea after that incident. She was like, this is okay. Look, the ship held up pretty well. We're fine. So she was transferred to a new ship in April of 1912, the Titanic.
One that she applied to be on.
Yes. Yeah, she was super excited to do
She's
this.
like, this one's going to be new. It's going to be shinier.
Yeah. She was so excited.
And all of her friends were moving over to it, too. So, of course,
Yeah.
you got to go where your friends are going.
Absolutely. So she recalled in her memoirs how glorious it was. The woodwork, the fine lace on the bedding, the private decks for some of the fancier suites. Like, if you've seen the movie Titanic, you know what we're talking about. She expressed pure joy in her own room because it had private closets. She's like, shit, I've got my own fucking closet. This is amazing.
It's not very private now. There's, like, fish in there.
Yeah, right, yeah. There's, like, crustacean.
Didn't stay private for long.
Yeah, crabs and shit walking around. Yeah. So anyway, it was real luxury, was what she was saying. She mentioned how excited she was looking over the list of first-class passengers, seeing all of the celebrity names that she had read about in the papers. Right. She was very disappointed, actually, when it came to John Jacob Astor, because she had read a ton about him. Like, he was always in the papers, and his whole scandal with his new wife, his very young wife. She was really looking forward to seeing this wife of his. And his new young bride came on board, and she said that Mrs. Astor looked so sad and pathetic. And then it dawned on her. She's like, oh, money doesn't bring you happiness. Look at this sad bitch.
God.
Yeah, so she was feeling a little bit better about herself. So she was also sad when another nasty lady with another Pekingese came on board.
Of course.
She didn't give her real name in the book. She decided not to.
I'm sure in the back of her mind she was like, "Is it fucking Fifi?"
So she said that the horrid look on the face of the woman's personal maid made her feel really good about her own job. She's like, "Look, life at sea can be rough sometimes, but at least I'm not this poor bitch over here taking care of this fucking lady and Fifi."
Moving up the ladder.
Yeah. She's feeling pretty good about herself. Anyway, so on the dreaded Sunday evening, April 14th at 11:40, she was laying in her bunk. She had just finished reading a prayer. She's Catholic. She's reading her Catholic prayers, and she's reading this stuff, and she's actually reading it out loud to her bunkmate. And suddenly she hears crash, then a low, rendering, crunching, ripping sound. This is her words. I can imagine, like, laying in your bunk and you're hearing.
Where in the ship was she? Well, I mean, as a stewardess, I'm sure she was probably in the front.
Yeah.
So pretty close to where it actually.
Yeah.
Impacted.
It was legit. Like, she was like, "What the?" Yeah. It was terrifying. When a fellow crew member came in and said the ship is sinking, she was like, "No, fuck it. That's not even fucking possible, dude. No." She was trying to help her sleepy-eyed passengers get dressed, and she was so amazed. Like, one of the things she said was how calm everyone was. Like, everyone's like, "Are you kidding me? No, come on." So there was no fussing about by any passengers, and even some of the stewardesses and stewards were like, "No, this isn't even possible." And like, look, you know what? Like if you in the movie Titanic, you got the one lady who's like, "Go back to my room. I'd like a hot pot of tea when I get back." Like they're like, "This is not gonna fucking happen. We're not going to sink." Then she heard the order to get everyone in the lifeboats. So she went back down to her cabin. She found something slightly warmer to put on. She didn't really bring anything terribly warm because it's springtime. So she's like, "Yeah, it's going to be fine." But her friend yelled at her to hurry up. He's like, "Get going. Let's go. We have to move now." Like, this guy clearly understands more than she does. She mentioned running into Jacques Hume, who was one of the members of the band that would keep playing throughout the evening. And she saw him playing up on the deck, and she watched as wealthy women yelled at officers who were trying to put them in the lifeboats. And they're like, no, I'm not leaving. What are you talking about? Because they just didn't get it. And she was like, she didn't even get it. She was like, what is going on? So things started off slowly, of course, but gradually got out of hand. Eventually, it started letting the third-class folks up. And, of course, by that point, she noticed how few of the boats had been fully filled. Like, we all know that a lot of them were not fully filled properly. And she noticed that the front end of the ship was seriously getting low. And she was like, that's not supposed to happen. So, finally, she was told to get into a lifeboat. And someone handed her, as she's getting into this lifeboat, someone just hands her a kid. Like, just hands over. She's like, who's that goddamn baby? Like, what? So,
free kid.
Yeah, free kid.
Future slave labor.
She's sitting in this lifeboat as they're lowering it, and she's holding onto this kid, and she's just, like, going down the side of the ship, and she's counting, like, the amount of decks that she can still see lit up. And as they're pulling away from the ship, she's like, oh, there's 5 decks. Oh, there's 4 decks. Wait, no, I have to recount. What? No, there's 3 decks. Whoa, it's fucking going down. Like, it suddenly dawned on her.
That is a very disconcerting feeling.
So she remembered how sad it was when they were finally, well, let me move back a second. So the ship sinks. She doesn't mention it splitting in half, right? Like a lot of people didn't realize that it had split in half. She's just like hanging out in this boat full of people. Since she had got on one of the last boats, most of the people don't even speak English. So they're like, whoa, what? What just happened? Where did it go? The ship is gone. And then she said for a couple minutes you heard lots of screaming and then nothing. Just nothing. One by one, everybody just kind of succumbing to the cold of the water and dying. And she wrote this in her book, like, it had dawned on her that everything was over. And now they're all like just popping around in the middle of the ocean, trying desperately to row to some light that they see on the horizon of a ship, and realizing they're not really moving that well at all. So she remembered how sad it was when they were finally rescued by the Carpathia, how she was trying hard to find familiar faces, how they were pouring down hot liquor down her throat to kind of reanimate her, essentially.
All the while, she still had this kid.
Yeah. No, well, as she got off the Carpathia, suddenly some lady comes along and just takes the child and goes away.
Yeah.
She's like, whoa.
Well, that's probably your mom. I hope. Maybe. I guess.
Yeah, she had no idea. She's like, I don't know who that was. They took the kid. That's great, because I don't do kids.
I'm too pretty. Dead ass.
She was amazed to see Officer Charles Lightoller, right? She was like, hey, there he is. She thought that he had died. Some random lady, like I said, took the baby from her. Oh, weirdly, when she got back home to England, after it was all said and done, they landed in New York. She's in New York for a little bit. She gets on another ship, goes back home to England. When she gets to England, a London newspaper gives her a gift of £25, which is a fair chunk of money in 1912. And then the mayor of Southampton gives her £10 as a gift. But then the mayor gets all angry when he hears that she was given £25 from the newspaper, and he asked for the £10 back. And she's like, "What the?
You cheap bastard!"
She's like, "I just really." Anyway, so you might think after changing careers, you might think that let's try that again. You might think that she would change careers after all this, but not Violet. She loved the sea, so she would sail next on the Olympic again. Back to the Olympic. It's been fixed. It's all good. Actually, they kind of reinforced it. It's ready to go. And she will stay on the Olympic until the beginning of World War I. Now, in World War I, she joined the Voluntary Aid Detachment as a junior nurse back home on shore. So she's working on shore. She's learning how to be a nurse. And she's quite good at being a nurse because she's got excellent bedside manner from spending so much time in hospitals as a child.
And she's pretty.
When she heard that Titanic's sister ship, Britannic, was getting outfitted as a hospital ship, she simply has to be on it. And I'm like, girl, no, you don't. No, you don't. You do not need to get on any fucking more ships. But she's like, no, I'm getting on the Britannic. So, they departed on November 12th, 1916. The Britannic set sail, hoping to pick up a shipment of wounded in Greece. And on November 21st, just as the crew was having their breakfast, suddenly, Violet said that there was a deafening roar and the entire ship just... Why can't I read my own handwriting? Sorry. The entire ship shuddered violently. They all knew they had struck. They had struck a mine, actually. They didn't know at the time. They're like, is it a torpedo? Is it a mine? It was a mine.
On a side note, when it comes to people who are fans of the Britannic, especially the movie Britannic, which is perhaps I'd say one of the most brilliant piles of shit ever shot upon actual historical accuracy. So if you like that movie, I'm very sorry, but that movie is probably one of the single most inaccurate historical depictions of a maritime disaster ever. So yeah, don't ever get your facts from that movie.
No.
That would be a genuine mistake.
Like even if you just go on YouTube and you look up like Britannic, and some of the few clips that come up are like the scene from the film where they're like trying to get people on the lifeboats and there's like a thunderstorm going on, and I'm like, no. First of all, it's night. There's a thunderstorm going on. I'm like, first of all, it was morning.
Yeah.
It was bright, sunny, and beautiful. No.
There's videos tearing that movie to shreds, but just don't you get your details from that.
No, please don't. So yes, that's terrible. So anyway, so like I said, it was actually quite a beautiful day. They'd struck a mine. And she said everyone just sprang up quickly. Like, she said it was such a contrast between the Titanic and the Britannic, because on the Titanic, everyone's like, oh dear, oh, what?
Is there something the matter?
No, nothing's wrong. No, go back to bed. But on the Britannic, everyone's like literally on
We're gonna die!
Go, man, go. But, I mean, first of all, there's the memory of the Titanic. And number two, it's wartime. So, yeah, anything's possible when it's wartime. So everybody was immediately in action, but she had actually was taking care of a sick nurse, so she ran down to help the sick nurse get dressed and send her up to the lifeboats. Then she took her time. Strangely enough, she went back down to her cabin to get her things. She's packing up all her stuff. She's getting her life jacket. She's thinking about what kind of clothes to wear because the temperature is so different from when she was on the Titanic. So she actually heads back up on deck, and by that point, a lot of the women had been let off the ship. They were the first ones on the lifeboats. However, that being said, the ship was still steaming. They were trying to ground her on a local island, right? And so it's still moving along, but it's also still sinking. There's a couple reasons for that. The hull of the Britannic had flexed from the mine detonation, which prevented the watertight doors from closing properly. Also, the staff had opened a lot of the porthole windows to air out the ship because it was incredibly hot. So the ship was filling up faster because it was still moving at a pretty rapid pace, and there were all kinds of holes and entryways for stuff to come in, water to come in quickly. Now, lifeboats were being launched without the captain's orders. Like, he didn't say anything because the ship is still fucking moving. He's trying to send her aground, which I think is like 7 miles away from where they had hit the mine.
Yeah, too far.
Yeah, too far. And he hadn't stopped the propellers from moving because the ship is still going. So they're launching lifeboats while the ship is sinking and propellers are moving. And that is where you get most of the death in this situation. Granted, not nearly as much as the Titanic, but most of the deaths that occur in the Britannic are from people literally being sliced up by the fucking propellers And it almost happens to Violet.
Yeah, one boat, 30 people.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
damn.
So, and it could have been way worse because it wasn't loaded with wounded soldiers yet. They were on their way to get the soldiers. So if that ship had been loaded with wounded soldiers, it would have been it would have been another Titanic. It would have been very similar. So, anyway, she's in a lifeboat. They're lowering the lifeboat. The ship is still moving. The propellers are literally out of the water, and at least one of the propellers is. And her lifeboat actually gets stuck on one of those open porthole windows. And then they're kind of trying to lower it down into the water. Finally, it hits the water, and then she sees all the guys in the boat around her literally jump off, and she's like, where the fuck are they going? And she turns around, and there's the fucking propeller. So she's like, oh yeah, I should probably jump too. So she jumps. She remembers being hit in the head by something. I don't know what.
She cracked her skull on the actual ship.
Is that what it was?
Yep. She hit the ship on her way down.
Did you know? Did you read this? You read about my girl, didn't you?
No, not. You know, I wanted to come in this not completely blind. So, but.
Yeah, she was.
That incident, that very moment, sent her through a lifetime full of migraines, which I suffer from migraines. So I feel her pain just without the crack in my skull.
Yeah. So anyway, she also badly injured her legs somehow, and when she finally came up for oxygen, essentially, she remembered the horrid scene. I mean, body parts all over the water. Like, she remembers seeing just a head and the brains kind of oozing out. Like, I mean, it was just
sexy.
It was gross, and she was so bothered by it for the rest of her life. Like, it was major. So she was finally picked up by a boat. She had, like I said, a gash to her leg. She had her leg was all pretty messed up, and yeah, it was rough on her. Now, that being said, it didn't stop her from continuing her life of service. Eventually, she recovered from her wounds and got right back out there. With
the exception of the skull fracture, I'm pretty sure she would have wished that ibuprofen was invented.
Yeah. Oh, sure. That would that would be incredibly helpful. So anyway, after the war, she continued to work for several various lines. Of course, the White Star Line, the Red Star Line, and then she went back to the Royal Mail line that she had originally started with. She did get married for like a hot second, which she didn't even talk about in her memoirs. Like, she's like, that wasn't worth writing about. So she got married. There's not a lot known about the guy that she married. We think she maybe got married in like the 1930s, maybe? I think, in her late 30s. Yeah, brief marriage. And then by 1950, she retired to Suffolk, England. Now, in her retirement, interestingly enough, she got a call one day. And she said that she answered the phone, and the voice on the other line said, asked if she was Jessop and if she had saved a baby on the night the Titanic sank. And when Jessop said yes, the voice then said, I was that baby. And then they laughed, and then they hung up. So her biographer was like, oh, it was probably just a prank. But she said, it couldn't have been a prank because I never told anybody that. Like, I never said that to anybody. So, who knows? Who knows what happened with that baby? Who they really were? I have no idea. Anyway, after a life of sailing at sea, she died in 1971 at the age of 83 from congestive heart failure. So, that's our girl, Violet Jessop, and her interesting voyages on sea. And I just wanted to kind of tell people about her just a little bit, just a smidge. She seemed like a pretty awesome lady.
Well, she certainly had the luck of the Irish.
Yeah, I'll say. She got fucking lucky. Well, I mean, a lot.
The luck of the Irish being, a happy medium of, well, you survived, but you had to deal with it anyway.
Yeah.
It's the kind of luck that just kind of evens itself out.
So, that was my favorite dead person. One of my favorite dead people. So, who do you have?
So, I have Officer Charles Herbert Lightoller.
Yay!
So, the connection is kind of obvious now, I think. But this dude, like, for those who... Most people are probably familiar mostly with him through the movie Titanic, which they didn't do a very good job actually portraying this guy. Like, the guy who played Charles Herbert Lightoller in the movie was kind of like, I don't know, he just didn't have enough balls, I guess, put bluntly. Because Charles, he was basically what we would call today a Giga Chad. Like, this dude, he had one hell of a life. And that's the reason why, to me, he's one of the most fascinating dead people. He was born on March 30th, 1874. He died on December 8th, 1952, which is worth noting because December 8th is also the same day John Lennon was shot. So he's got a
Another
little bit
favorite dead person to talk about.
His I don't know, too crazy much about his early life. I know that his family wasn't really, they're not really a maritime family. Like nobody like was out to sea for long periods of time, but he was interested in doing that. He wanted to go out to sea. He wanted to experience the world. Like, he didn't just want to be hanging around on some farm somewhere. Although he did that in his lifetime. But basically, he went out on a small ship called the Holt Hill. He lived in London, but he went on this ship that basically took him all the way to Australia and to a bunch of ports all over the world. But not too long into, I believe, his very first voyage with this ship, they experienced a lot of bad weather. One of the worst storms actually sent them into rocks. They actually had to beach their ship on some rocks on an island. And
you
the
could
next
say his career
day,
got off to a rocky start.
very. Basically, his first ship disaster was on the Holt Hill. They ended up stranded on St. Paul Island, which, if you don't know where that is, it's freaking down there. It's like south of Australia. It's a tiny little 2.6 mile island that's like not too terribly far away from Antarctica.
So he was stranded?
Yes, him and all the crew from the Holt Hill were stranded.
So he had other guys with him, so he didn't have to
Yeah,
have
no, it was like 120 of them or something. And like two guys died, I think, on the rocks. But
he didn't need like a little ball named Wilson? Nothing like that? Oh, okay.
No, he had some. Well, he probably was. They were probably all wishing that they had something because it took them 2 days to find the only water source on the island, which is pretty close to how long a human being can survive without water.
Ouch.
So he in coming back from that ship, once he got back to London, he had himself a little bit of a bout of malaria, which almost killed him, which is fantastic. And he was kind of like, you know what, this life at sea thing probably is, at this point, he had been on the sea. He had gone on many different ships and was mostly sail ships. He always favored sailing ships. But he made his way over to Canada, and he became a cowboy. He for the Klondike Gold Rush, he thought he would get himself rich and find himself some gold. And that failed.
So he goes from the sea to literally being a cowboy.
Yep.
Wow.
And he's like, well, you know what? I'll give this a try, because why not? So basically,
he's open to ideas, open to possibilities. That's pretty good.
Yeah. No. Well, he became a full-on cowboy over in Canada. But unfortunately, that rendered him completely broke. So he turned into essentially a hobo. He had to basically just jump on trains to get himself to a point where he can get back to London.
Wow.
So he crossed Canada by basically just hopping on trains after being a full-on cowboy. Now, one thing, a side note about this guy, I should have actually said first off, like, a lot of people would see him in the movie and they were like, okay, that's what kind of person he was. He was actually a very intelligent person. He had a great sense of humor. He basically he was a little bit eccentric. He was a very outgoing sort of person. I mean, if you're going to go all around the world, you're going to be a cowboy, you're going to be all these different things. You're going to have some kind of a personality to you. There was one incident where he actually, Sydney was having a revolution essentially, and he was like, well, you know what, I'm gonna prank by rowing out to an island fort and shooting a cannon to make people feel like they're being attacked.
Wait. So he's pranking.
Yeah, he was a prankster, but he was like the full-on prankster. He's the kind of guy who would like really troll you. He was like a 20th century troll. This is why I like this guy. This is why I relate to him, and he's one of my favorite people. Not only was he like, he has such an intense life, but he was kind of a relatable person because he was kind of funny. I'm not as organized as you. I have bullet points. You
got it. Whatever you got to do, it's all good.
But
you're doing great.
Basically, his maritime, he was on so many ships. He preferred the sailing ships, but he was on a lot of ships, and he had his fair share of maritime disasters via those ships. So many to go into. I don't want to bore you for hours. But long story short with him, he got onto the SS Majestic as well.
At the same time as Jessop?
I don't believe it was the same time. It was a little bit before that. I think it was like the 1909, somewhere in there.
Well, I think that's more or less when she was hanging around there.
It might have been. They might have been. They might have actually. I mean, they were both working for the White Star Line at the same time, so they definitely had to have crossed paths quite a bit. But yeah, he worked on, I believe, as the 4th officer on the Majestic, under the command of Edward J. Smith. And then he was actually promoted onto the RMS Oceanic as the 3rd officer. And this was just prior to him being promoted yet again to the 2nd officer on this ship. I guess it's called the Titanic. Some people have heard of it.
Oh, no idea. His
favorite ship, though, throughout his entire career was indeed the RMS Oceanic, which was the pride of the White Star Line prior to the creation of the Olympic. So, very beautiful two-funneled ship that he absolutely was in love with. He was obsessed with the Oceanic, actually.
But it wasn't part of the Olympic class.
No, it was quite a bit smaller. Yeah. But it was one of the biggest ships when it first was created. It was the biggest ship in the world, and he was very happy to be on that ship. And then when he was promoted to 2nd officer on the Titanic, he was very happy to be on that ship because, hey, you know what? That's kind of like your 20th century flexing. It's like, I'm on the biggest ship in the world. Hey, ladies. Deadass. But yeah, no, I mean, his time, obviously, on the Titanic, incredibly short. But he was one of the heroes of the Titanic. I mean, he was the guy who was just like, should we get women and children on the lifeboats first? He was in charge of firing the rockets. Like, that guy, he in his own memoirs, he was like, well, we assumed that we were going to be saved because he could see the lights on the horizon of the California. He said that he could see them so clearly that he can see the lights of the portholes. Like, so obviously the ship is coming to their help. So even he, to a certain degree of the sinking of the Titanic, was like, yeah, we're going to be fine. Like, we'll get saved. Like, at worst, it'll be a last minute sort of deal, but his assumption was that everything was going to be okay. And once it started to dawn on him that things were not going to be okay, that's when the shit sort of started hitting the fan. And he was, this guy is just sort of, he just jumped out of bed because when William Murdoch took control of the watch from Lightoller, Lightoller went to his bunk. He was ready to go to bed. He was out of his uniform. He was ready to just go to sleep for the night. And when they hit the iceberg, he said that there was a jolt, but he was like, it's probably nothing. And then he was, called for, and he threw on a sweater. And he just went up on deck and he tried to yell orders because the steam was coming out of the smokestacks, and that wasn't really happening. But when it all came down to it, and there was no more lifeboats except for the collapsibles, he tried to take charge of one of the collapsibles, and everybody, from the movie's perspective, a lot of that was relatively accurate. That particular collapsible was upside down. He almost got sucked down with the ship because one of the vents actually sucked him toward the vent. Thank God there was a grate on the vent, because otherwise history would be different. He would have been sucked down into the bowels of the ship, and that would have been it.
Well, I heard that he was actually saved by like a slight explosion.
Yeah, that vent basically that was sucking him towards it. Actually, like some sort of gust of air pushed him away.
Yeah.
He also almost got hit by the front funnel when the front funnel came down, just inches away from that. So he was very lucky in that respect.
Man, both of our people had that luck of the Irish game going on.
Yeah, although he was very much English. But yeah, no, the whole Titanic thing was pretty short, but it made him sort of a legend for what he tried to do. He was basically just an officer at the whole time, a very dignified officer. And the highest ranking officer to survive the Titanic, for sure.
Yeah, I think there were, 4 officers survived?
Yeah, that's the one thing, if the guy who's in charge is the second officer, the shit has hit the fan.
Yeah.
there's plenty of different guys in command, but the Titanic was definitely a hell of an experience for him. But he moved on after he still stayed with the White Star Line. He went actually back to his beloved RMS Oceanic, which I actually should say he was on the Olympic for a short period of time.
Okay.
So Jessop and he have had to have at least crossed paths once.
Oh yeah, no, she knew him for sure. She mentioned how happy she was to see him on the deck of the Carpathia. Like she was like, "Oh, hey, it's Charles." Yeah. So she was definitely like. I think she called him Herbert actually. But yeah, she was excited to see a familiar face, because there weren't many.
Yeah, well, after the Titanic, he went on to the Oceanic again and served for a while up until, of course, World War I, in which case he stopped serving on the RMS Oceanic and he started serving on the HMS Oceanic. Because they turned it into a merchant cruiser at that point. So he was very happy to basically be working on the ship that he loved the most. But, of course, because these things happen, the Oceanic grounded, and basically it was in a port where it was unsavable. And he was very upset about this. So he actually took the clock that was on the ship that he loved so much. He was the last person to leave the ship, and he had to take a clock with him so he can be reminded of it because he loved it so much.
I mean, hey, yeah, take a souvenir. What the hell?
And the rest of it, his story through World War One, is pretty crazy. He was an officer on another ocean liner that had been converted to an aircraft carrier, so he had experience working on a very early aircraft carrier. Then he was given command of a torpedo boat. And on this torpedo boat, this guy was shooting at a Zeppelin. He had a long night battle with a Zeppelin. Basically, all the lights were out, and one of the guys on board his torpedo boat was like, hey, I think there's a Zeppelin right above us. And he waited until the Zeppelin was indeed in a perfect place for them to just start opening fire on it, and they gave it hell. They didn't take it down, but they fought it for quite a while overnight. And
Wait, hold on a second. Zeppelin is just a big airship, right?
Giant airship,
and
not Led Zeppelin.
You're firing bullets at it, and it's not coming down?
Well, they fired incendiary rounds, basically a round that would explode as soon as it penetrated. There's a bunch of different. Actually, that was a whole thing. Like there were people designing rounds that would best take down Zeppelins.
I guess they didn't have any of those rounds.
They made a mess of it.
Okay.
But after that, because of that, he was actually given the command of the HMS Falcon, which was a torpedo boat destroyer. So it's a bigger. He was on a torpedo boat, and then he was given command of something bigger and better. And that was a really heavy-duty, awesome ship that got hit by another ship during a convoy and sank. So here he is again, and he was actually... It was the ship that he was in command of now actually got hit by another ship from the same side that was trying to protect the convoy. So of course he was court-martialed for it, but during the court-martial he was actually exonerated because he's a badass and he was one of the last people off the ship, and he got all of his men off, and he did the best he could in that particular situation. So they were like, yeah, you know what, you're fine, that's cool. So they gave him command of another ship because why not? This guy's badass. And at this point he goes on to sink a U-boat, which is like super awesome. Like back in World War I, if you sank a U-boat, you were like the man. Because the U-boats were really, really causing like havoc on the commerce raiders.
Huh.
So of course, after the war, I mean, he's decorated because of all the things that he did during the war, and after the war, he's kind of conflicted because, like, he knows for a fact if he goes back to the White Star Line, and he starts working for the White Star Line again, he's always gonna have that one black mark on his career, and that's the Titanic.
But that's not his fault.
Yeah, but there was still things that made it so it was just not good. It wasn't a positive thing, even though he was a total boss during the Titanic and even through World War One. It was still a stain on his career, and he didn't think that there was anywhere that he can grow within the line. Like, he didn't see himself as being a captain or anything.
That's the British for you. Like, oh, you survived that incident. Oh, that's a mark on your score there.
Like, he didn't go down with the ship or anything.
Yeah.
So
you'd have more glory.
If you died, that would have been better for you. But at least that's the way he looked at it.
Yeah.
So as you would expect, a man who spent most of his life being a badass at sea, he went on to become a chicken farmer, which is what you would expect, I think. But I mean, from he did have experience being a cowboy, so
right, yeah, cowboy, hobo.
He was also an innkeeper, and he was also a property speculator. The guy's had a lot of jobs.
Seriously.
And during this time, he also wrote a book called the Titanic and Other Ships, which he actually puts in the book. My wife made me do it because his wife, which I see. This is why I should have written things out instead of bullet points. He had 5 kids with this lady that he met in Sydney before all this shit went down. But yeah, my wife made me do it. It was Titanic and Other Ships, and that actually was taken off the shelves because he had made some inquiries, or he had said some things in the book that people who at the White Star Line didn't really want getting out. Oh. So they were kind of angry with that. But he, in this time, he, kept himself occupied because he got himself a personal boat called the Sundowner, which was, it is a pretty decent sized boat, can license to, carry about 21 people. Okay. And it was his baby. And that boat was, what he did to have his time at the sea. And when World War II came around, that thing.
That little thing, yeah.
Yeah, when World War II broke out, of course, this guy is not going to just sit down and do nothing. So the British government wanted to use his boat, and they took a lot of small vessels from a lot of people to basically use for the evacuation of Dunkirk.
Okay.
And they wanted to use his boat as well in the evacuation. And he was like, well, no, you're not going to use my boat. Like, I'm going to use my boat. So this guy basically takes his freaking tiny little vessel and he crosses the English Channel. And as he's doing this, there's freaking German bombers sending bombs at his boat. And it's not by luck that he misses these bombs. Like, he actually is, his son is driving the boat, and he's at the bow of the boat, and he's like looking at the bomber, and he's standing there with his arms at the ready, and when the bomber drops the bomb, he basically sees the bomb drop in the water, and then he immediately shouts to his son and points in the direction where his son has to jackknife the boat so they can miss the freaking bomb. So yeah,
wow.
It's pretty crazy, and he had to do this like all the way across the channel.
Wow.
Otherwise he would have been blown out of the water.
Jesus.
And by the time they actually got to Dunkirk, he stuffed 127 guys on this tiny little boat, the Sundowner, and then he had to go all the way across the English Channel again, dodging bombs with 127 people on this tiny little boat.
Wait. I thought it was only meant for 21.
Yep.
And there's 127 people on it?
When he got to the dock, one of the first people asked him, "Where'd you put him?" Because there's no place to put him.
How did it not sink with all that extra weight?
Good question. It's just one of those things where you have to have massive balls.
Oh, yeah.
And that's you know, all those things combined are why I think this guy is so awesome. Unfortunately, he died, as I said, on December 8th, 1952. After a very long life, he died at 78 years old.
Okay.
Out at sea. Of course, being a sailor, he was a pipe smoker. So he died of chronic heart disease, but he died during the Great London Smog of 1952, so that didn't help.
Oh, yeah.
So if you got, chronic heart disease and there's a giant smog, you're probably not going to fare too well.
You're screwed.
He didn't. So that's basically Charles Lightoller in very brief.
Oh, that was cool.
Like, I could probably go, I mean, his I would go deeper into his family. I'd have to say his family wasn't quite as lucky as him. One of his sons, on the very first day that Britain went to war with Germany, his son was a member of the RAF, and he died on the very first day.
That's...
Yeah. So his kin didn't have as much luck as he did.
Yeah.
They should have been cowboys, too. But, yeah, no, he, for someone to be stranded on a desert island, desolate island, not desert, but desolate island... Mm-hmm. To have had malaria, went through the gold rush as a cowboy, survived the Titanic, survived, his all of World War I, having, gotten through all that, it's pretty incredible. That's why, I mean, he's not just the, wheezy little pussy that they kind of portray in the movie Titanic.
I recall that the movie A Night to Remember, the guy playing him in that one seemed much more tough, much more like what you're describing.
I think I saw that movie last when I was 10.
Yeah, I know.
It was a good movie. I watched it a lot, but I don't remember it very well.
It's a long time ago. It's a old movie for sure. But I feel like the guy that was in that movie, he was wearing the sweater, like you mentioned, and he just seemed to take control of things much more so than the
Charles Lightoller was a badass.
Yeah.
He really was a badass. I mean, he like I said, he was a little bit eccentric. Yeah. So a lot of people say, there were.
Well, you have to be to take on one of those jobs. You have to be a little weird to just be like, no, I'm going to do this. No, I'll do this.
I'm going to be a sailor. No, I'm going to be a cowboy. No, I'm going to be an innkeeper. No, I'm going to be a chicken farmer. No, I'm going to be a prospector or a property speculator. Actually, in the twilight of his life, he owned a small boatyard. So at least he ended with a job that was, reminiscent to his life at sea, at least.
Yeah.
But, fascinating character, and, the one that I figured a lot of people probably don't know too much about, unless you're a total Titanic nerd.
Well, that's awesome. I love it. I've learned so much, and we talked about some pretty interesting dead people today. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this one. And
not a problem.
Thanks for doing all your good research and telling some good stories.
I'm
and-
not as smooth as you. I'll pick it up.
No, that was great. It was really good. Totally good. Yeah. We'll do this some more.
Aye.
And also, anybody else who wants to join in on our podcast and be a co-host from time to time, would mention your favorite dead people, feel free to drop us a line. Favorite dead podcast at gmail.com. And if you want to get on board with this, please, by all means. So, that's our show for the day. Thank you, Shawn. And thank you all for listening. And have a lovely day. Don't die.
People are dead. I say it, all my favorite people are dead.